Hey guys, tonight we wander along winding mountain trails carved into mist-shrouded peaks of ancient China, feeling the soft tread of your sandals on time-worn stone steps and inhaling the sweet curl of smoky incense that drifts from your palms. Just don't try to scarf down your entire supply of steamed rice cakes in one sitting. You probably won't survive that sugar rush. Trust me, your stomach will file a formal complaint. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is on your clock right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You drag your feet over polished stone steps, slick with morning dew, each footfall echoing against centuries-old grotto walls painted with fading images of Buddhas and immortals. In the Tang Dynasty, a spiritual renaissance sweeps across the empire, and pilgrims from every province, peasants, poets, even princes, set out for sacred mountains like Wutai Ame and Huashan. You catch the scent of pine resin mingling with sandalwood incense burned at roadside shrines, and it wraps around you like a warm cloak. Strange fact, some pilgrims tied small bells to their straw hats so that temple guardians would know when a traveler approached. Imagine modern tourists jingling through a museum like walking keychains. You steady your breath and think, it's like wearing a Fitbit that chimes every time you step on holy ground. Along these carved trails, whole caravans form families, monks, and merchant bands, all bound by the promise of spiritual merit and divine favor. In 666 CE, a popular historical event unfolds when Emperor Gaozong himself sponsors a grand pilgrimage festival at Mount Tai, sending envoys and lavish offerings to the summit temples. Lanterns blaze in the dusk, monks chant sutras beneath red lacquered pavilions, and incense columns spiral into the night sky as though the mountain itself exhales reverence. You watch travelers prostrate themselves before gilded statues, offering jade tokens and handwritten prayers. It feels like dropping a wish coin into a cosmic wishing well, only this one might actually work. Amid the rhythmic clack of wooden clogs and the hum of devotional hymns, you sense how both Buddhism and Taoism fuel these mass journeys. Temples double as way stations. You hear the creak of sliding doors as friendly hosts beckon weary feet inside, offering bowls of congee spiced with ginger and candied jujubes for extra pep. You lift a spoon, tasting the sweet, spicy warmth like an energy bar made by monks, and marvel at how these rituals weave comfort into every step. Historians still debate whether the earliest Tang pilgrim routes were inspired more by Indian Buddhist traditions or by indigenous Taoist mountain cults. But either way, you can't argue with the sight of hundreds of travelers tracing those ancient footsteps, each inhalation of incense-laced air, a prayer in motion. As you crest a final ridge, a grove of ancient cypress trees greets you, their trunks gnarled like old storytellers, leaning in to whisper secrets. Lanterns dangle from low branches, lighting the path to a cliff-edge pavilion where incense coils spiral skyward, carrying your hopes into the mist. You pause to run a palm over the weathered rail, the wood still warm from the afternoon sun, and inhale deeply pine, sandalwood, and the distant echo of temple bells. Ahead lies the next chapter of our journey, the humble paper scroll that pilgrims began carrying as talismans, soon to be infused with fragrant wonders. The path unfolds before you, each step a bridge between earth and heaven. and your adventure continues. You step off the mossy steps into a quiet courtyard where incense coils still smolder in iron braziers, their fragrant smoke curling toward slate-gray skies like ghostly ribbons. In the hush, you notice pilgrims unfolding thin sheets of rice paper stamped with black ink sutras, small scrolls inscribed by temple scribes, each one carrying a mantra for protection. You pick up one such scroll and feel its crisp texture between your fingers, the ink slightly raised, as though the words themselves pulse with power. It's the Tang Dynasty's answer to modern good luck charms. Imagine strapping a handful of motivational sticky notes to your backpack, except these could ward off demons instead of just Monday blues. Strange fact, some pilgrims secretly rolled their scrolls inside hollowed gourds to keep them dry during monsoon rains, effectively inventing Asia's first waterproof smartphone case. These portable talismans become as essential as water gourds on long pilgrimages tucked into belts or sewn into linen sashes. You hear the soft snap of paper as travelers unsheathe their scrolls at roadside shrines, reciting sutras that echo like distant bells. A popular historical event marks this transformation in 712 CE when Empress Wu Zetian orders temple workshops across Chang'an to produce tens of thousands of prayer scrolls for state-sponsored pilgrim caravans to Mount Wutai. Lantern-lit processions snake through the capital's gates as chantmasters distribute scrolls, each one promising safe passage and divine favor. You can almost feel the collective heartbeats of 1,000 pilgrims syncing with the pulsing mantra, creating a human tide, carrying incense and hope across mountains and rivers. You lean against a weathered stone pillar, inhaling the mingled scent of ink paper and lingering sandalwood from the braziers. The aroma is comforting, a blend of fresh stationery and spiritual promise, like receiving a handwritten letter stamped with a temple seal. As you dab a fingertip on a fresh scroll, you taste a faint tang of rice paste used to bind the layers, and you think it's like carrying a portable hug from a monk. Historians still debate whether these scrolls served more as practical guidebooks detailing safe routes, monastic way stations and water sources, or purely as prayer aids to be waved at demons. Either way, their popularity soars among commoners and court officials alike, each group eager to claim a scrap of paper imbued with sacred power. Behind you, a caravan of traders unloads woven baskets of silk brocade pouches intended to house these scrolls, ensuring that both the amulet and its container are worthy of temple blessings. You peer into a pouch lined with crimson velvet, its soft fibers meant to cushion the fragile paper, much like a jeweler's case protects a pearl. A light joke flits through your mind. It's like gifting someone a $5 fortune cookie in a Louis Vuitton box. And you suppress a chuckle, lest you offend the dignified monk overseeing the distribution. A monk in saffron robes beckons you forward, handing you a new scroll scented with camphor and frankincense. You press it to your forehead, feeling its warmth and the gentle hum of devotional energy coursing through your fingertips. It's hard to believe something so simple, a few lines of ink on paper, can carry the weight of divine guardians. Yet here you are, comforted by its presence as you prepare to cross a narrow mountain pass, known for sudden thunderstorms and prowling bandits. You recollect the crisp spray of morning dew on those stone steps and the hush of chanting echoing off grotto walls. Now you tuck the scroll into your sash, its edges peeking out like a folded origami crane waiting to unfold blessings. Each time you glimpse it, you're reminded that beyond physical supplies, rice cakes, water gourds, straw sandals, pilgrims journey with faith made tangible on paper. A light modern quip pops in your mind. It's like carrying a pocket-sized cloud of good vibes, and you smile at the thought of ancient travelers trading these scrolls like collectible trading cards. Further along, a group of merchants pauses by a roadside shrine, lifting their pouches to release a swirl of sweet smoke as they chant. The mingling scents of agarwood fire and ink-dried rice paper create a multi-sensory ritual that anchors your heart. Each exhalation seems to clear the way ahead, and each recitation of the sutra feels like stitching a spiritual lifeline through the air. A strange fact surfaces. Some pilgrims believe that once the ink on these scrolls faded, it signaled the completion of their karmic blessings, prompting them to return home or commission fresh inscriptions for a second journey. As the caravan moves on, you trail behind the scroll's gentle rustle, a constant companion against the whisper of bamboo groves and the distant clatter of horse hooves. The paper's whisper blends with your footsteps, creating a rhythmic mantra of its own. Above, temple bells toll in uneven rhythms, lending gravity to each chant and each turn of the scroll. Ahead lies the next revelation. In this aromatic pilgrimage, the moment artisans first thought to infuse that paper with incense itself, transforming written talismans into fragrant charms that become living prayers on the wind. Your journey continues. You step into a dim hall where jade statuettes of Buddhas and Taoist immortals stand guard beneath towering incense burners, the air thick with curling curls of sandalwood smoke that drift like lazy dancers around your shoulders. Every inhalation feels like a gentle massage on your lungs, as if the world itself is exhaling comfort. Strange fact, some Tang pilgrims believed that incense smoke could carry their prayers all the way to heaven. So much so that monks once filled entire palace rooftops with braziers, turning the imperial skyline into a fragrant fog bank. You smile imagining courtiers navigating Chang'an streets blindfolded by fragrant clouds bumping into each other like walking wishbones. In 745 CE, a popular historical event asserts itself when Master Wei of the Longmen Caves orchestrates the Incense Cascade Festival, burning 100,000 bundles of dragon's blood resin to consecrate new grotto statues. Lantern-lit processions wind down narrow alleyways, each pilgrim trailing a ribbon of crimson smoke that paints the night air. You follow the procession, the scent morphing from spicy resin to soft frankincense, as you edge closer to cavernous chambers echoing with low chants. It's like following a scented breadcrumb trail straight to spiritual wonder. Incense isn't just a sensory thrill, it's ritual lifeblood. You watch abbots dip gilded ladles into powdered agarwood, stirring it into oil that drips into braziers, each spark sending fragrant clouds spiraling upward. That heat teases out hidden floral notes you never knew agarwood could possess, like tasting dark chocolate with a sudden hint of violet. You think it's smoother than my Wi-Fi on a good day, marveling at how ancient artisans coax mystery from simple wood. Pilgrims fan the smoke toward temple murals, believing the rising curls awaken protective spirits painted into frescoes. Elsewhere, wandering monks use incense to map safe paths. They spin sensors on tripods above fording rivers, interpreting the way smoke bends as divine weather forecasts. It's one of those odd traditions few know about. Imagine checking your weather app by the direction of incense smoke rather than radar. Historians still debate whether these smoke-based forecasts began in Buddhist monasteries or earlier Taoist hermit groves. But either way, you can't deny the ingenuity. You trail your fingers through the air where smoke lingers, feeling its cool tendrils wrap around you like a whispered blessing. Even bandits reputedly respected the fragrant sanctity. No one dared attack a pilgrim whose smoke plume marked them under divine protection. You chuckle at the thought of highwaymen sniffing the air and thinking, "Not today. Buddha's watching," then scurry off into the night. As you leave the incense hall, your senses are tingling, a soft echo of sandalwood warmth clinging to your skin. Ahead lies the moment when paper and powder first entwine the birth of incense-laced scrolls that transform written prayers into living fragrances on the wind. Your journey continues. You slip through a side door into a hidden scriptorium, tucked beneath the temple's highest pavilion, where shafts of lantern light pick out clouds of fine white dust hovering above low wooden benches. Here, scribes in plain robes lean over tables strewn with dried agarwood chips, broken sandalwood fragments, and neat stacks of half-finished paper scrolls. In one corner, a low brazier smolders with fragrant embers, its smoke drifting upward like an invitation. Remember the way incense curls around ancient statues? Now imagine that curl imprinted directly onto your prayer scroll, so you can literally carry a piece of burning devotion in your pocket. You probably won't survive ripping into a stack of these before they dry. The glue alone could send you in a sneezing fit. But the idea feels like a genius hack that predates spray-on air freshener by a millennium. In 758 CE, a popular historical event sparks the innovation during the Grand Aroma Court held by Emperor Suzong. In Chang'an, courtiers compete to present the most inventive fragrance offerings. One ambitious monk named Daoxuan watches as rival delegations parade in trays of perfumed oils and incense cones shaped like lotus buds. Frustrated by the fleeting nature of burnt offerings, he hatches a daring plan at dawn to embed powdered agarwood directly into the fibers of devotional paper, so that each time a pilgrim unrolls a sutra, they inhale a living echo of temple incense. By sunset, word spreads through the court scrolls that smell like sacrifice. Preposterous, and historians still debate whether this very festival was the true birthplace of incense-laced scrolls, or merely the inspiration that drove artisans elsewhere to try the same trick. You crouch beside Daoxuan as he mixes a paste from crushed wood powder, rice glue, and a few drops of fragrant oil, stirring with a worn bamboo spatula that crackles with every motion. The texture reminds you of peanut butter laced with sawdust, an odd combo, but somehow inviting. When he brushes the mixture onto the blank margins of a fresh rice paper scroll, the fibers absorb it like thirsty earth drinking rain, turning pale cream paper into a canvas streaked with subtle brown veins. You inhale sharply, catching that deep, resinous note of agarwood married with the softer sweetness of sandalwood. It's like sipping an oolong tea that suddenly whispers lavender under the finish, unexpected, delicate, and oddly soothing. Nearby, a fellow scribe tests the drying time by tapping the scroll edge against a stone. A quick rattle means it's ready, while a dull thud sends him back to tweaked glue ratios. Strange fact, in early trials, monks tried mixing powdered deer antler into the fragrant paste, believing its warmth would amplify spiritual potency, until someone panicked over the scent of gamey musk and banned all bone-based additives. You grin at the thought of a devout pilgrim fumbling with an antler-scented prayer, then stiffen your nose as a stray whiff of fermenting paste brushes past you. As dusk falls, Daoxuan holds up a finished scroll and cracks a wry smile. Behold the world's first incense mobile. He rolls it closed, and you watch the paper exhale a thin ribbon of aroma with each revolution. You catch yourself thinking it's like a perfume sample card on steroids, and you smother a giggle so as not to break the solemn air. Pilgrims lingering nearby edge closer, sniffing and murmuring in awe as the scent coalesces into a heavenly whisper you could bottle for a lifetime. By candlelight, the scriptorium hums with newfound energy. Apprentices dip their brushes in fragrant paste and trace sutras with deliberate strokes, each character carrying a faint aroma that settles like a blessing into the paper. The walls, once silent witness to plain script, now vibrate with the scent of devotion. You pad across the wooden floor fingertips, brushing against wet scrolls, leaving faint smudges of paste that will turn into fragrant echoes once dried. In that moment, you realize this isn't just a clever trick, it's a sensory revolution binding sight, sound, and scent to the act of worship in a single artifact. Outside temple guards patrol under an archway carved with dragons and vines, their noses twitching as incense-laced scrolls begin drifting through the night air like silent prayer kites. At the gate, a group of novice pilgrims holds out fresh scrolls for Doxuan's blessing. He stamps each one with a chrysanthemum seal dipped in aromatic ink, sealing fragrance and sanctity in one motion. You watch the petals of the seal smudge slightly against the scented margins, sending another delicate cloud of wood smoke into the lantern-lit gloom. A light joke pokes at the back of your mind. Who knew holiest talismans could double as air fresheners? But you tuck it away mindful that levity can be a form of respect when handled gently. The next morning, caravans that have camped at the temple's base unfurl these incense-infused scrolls and hold them like fans before their faces, inhaling blessings on the breeze. Bandits lurking in bamboo groves give the procession a wide berth. Rumor holds that the smoke marks each pilgrim as under divine protection, a reputation so persuasive that no highwayman dares challenge a fragrant cavalcade. You join the line, breathing in the layered notes of resin and spice, feeling a buoyancy in your chest as though the scroll itself has woven an invisible cloak of safety around you. Even the weather seems to bend to the new practice as the first incense scroll-shaped prayer flutter rises. Wind gods push aside storm clouds, granting pilgrims clear skies. Strange fact, later records claim that on the festival's finale, not a single drop of rain fell despite an approaching monsoon front, convincing devotees that the scrolls had diverted a deluge. You tilt your head back, tasting the sky for thunder and tasting the scroll for sacred promise. Both feel humming with possibility. As you watch the first caravan slip down the mountain path, scrolls tucked into leather cases, scented like portable shrines at their waists, you sense the world's collective heartbeat shift. This fragile paper has become a living conduit for devotion, a fragrant map guiding you not just along trails, but through unseen realms of spirit. Ahead lies the chapter where these aromatic talismans leave temple courtyards and win their way into dusty desert caves, preserving their scent and their secrets for centuries. Your journey continues. You slip into a low-ceilinged workshop, nestled behind a temple kitchen, where the haze of incense meets the tang of rice vinegar, and the air tastes faintly of freshly pounded pulp. Ancient wooden beams overhead sag under the weight of hanging bundles of agarwood chips and baskets of sandalwood shavings. Here, artisans in stained smocks crouch over long tables strewn with brushes, bowls of fragrant paste, and stacks of pristine rice paper scrolls awaiting their aromatic fate. You breathe deep and feel the perfume coat your lungs, a heady mix of resinous depth and soft floral sweetness that tickles your nostrils like a whispered secret. At the far end of the room, Master Xuan, a lean craftsman with lacquer black hair and ink-stained fingers, scoops a spoonful of paste into a shallow dish. The mixture glows amber under the lantern light. He dips a broad brush into the fragrant compound powdered agarwood bound with rice starch and a drop of white sandalwood oil, and sweeps it along the margins of a written sutra. You can almost hear the paper sigh as it absorbs the scented slurry, the fibers swelling slightly before drying into a subtly mottled texture. Gentle strokes, he murmurs, guiding an apprentice's trembling hand. Too heavy, and the scroll will stick. Too light, and the fragrance fades before the journey even begins. The workshop hums with quiet industry. Lanterns drip wax onto clay tiles, and the rhythmic tap-tap of wooden mallets drives mortar that crushes fragrant woods into fine powder. Strange fact, early experiments even included crushed silkworm sprinkled into the paste, believed to carry prayers on their silk wings, until someone panicked at the faintly gummy undernote and insisted on pure wood-based blends. You snort at the image of a pilgrim sniffing his scroll and discovering a hint of boiled silkworm, then focus on the display line where finished scrolls lie like fragrant dominoes awaiting dispatch. In 764 CE, a popular historical event rallies temple workshops across the capital. Emperor Daizong issues an imperial decree granting licensed incense artisans exclusive rights to supply aromatic talismans for court-sponsored pilgrimages. Workshops suddenly swell with trainees, each seeking the coveted seal of approval stamped in vermilion on their scrolls. You watch as a herald strides through the workshop doorway, reading the edict aloud in booming tones that set bamboo wind chimes clattering by accident. The artisans exchange fierce glances, some thrilled at the honor, others jittery under newfound scrutiny. Historians still debate whether this decree truly elevated fragrant scrolls to court luxury or simply tightened the state's grip on spiritual trade, but either way, demand skyrockets, and the workshop pulses with a frenetic, hopeful energy. As dusk bleeds into night, the apprentices transfer finished scrolls onto long racks suspended above glowing charcoal braziers. The slow radiance coaxes out hidden fragrance each scroll, exhaling a gentle plume of scented air as though breathing its own prayer. You lean in close, letting the waft brush your face and quip. Silently, it's like every scroll is a tiny cloud of good vibes. The artisans nod, used to humor's soft companion to hard labor, and press on, folding each scroll into silk-lined cases embroidered with protective symbols. You trail your fingers over the silken pouches, feeling the raised embroidery of lotus and dragon motifs. Each case is more than a container. It's a promise that the scroll inside remains sheltered from rain and the ravages of time. You imagine a pilgrim drawing this out at a wind-whipped mountain pass, opening it like a secret treasure chest, not of coins, but of scent, scripture. A light joke drifts through, who needs GPS when you've got a scented oracle in your sash, and you tuck it away, mindful that even jokes can carry confident conviction when delivered gently. Outside, a lantern-lit procession forms as abbots and lay devotees gather scrolls in baskets woven from bamboo strips. Each scroll marked with the temple's chrysanthemum seal, and a whisper of fragrance slips into waiting hands. You step back and inhale the collective exhalation, the sweet smoke rising like a halo around every pilgrim. In that moment, you sense that these humble artisans have done more than infuse paper with aroma. They have stitched together faith craft and sensory wonder into a single artifact that will carry prayers, protection, and memory across mountains, deserts, and centuries. Your journey continues. You slip through the temple's great iron gates before first light, the courtyard still slick with dew and glowing dimly under lanterns hung from gnarled pines. In the hush, you hear the soft chant of Buddhist monks and the low murmur of Taoist priests reciting protective verses, each voice weaving a tapestry of sound that settles into your chest like a warm promise. Strange fact, some monks believe that breathing onto a scroll's edges transferred one's own life force into the paper, so you might inhale the ghost of 1,000 prayers if you lean in too close. You steady your nerves and think it's like trying to plug an emotional Fitbit into the divine mainframe. In 780 CE, a popular historical event unfolds during the inaugural Grand Pilgrim Benediction at Dacian Temple, where the emperor himself commissions 10,000 incense-laced scrolls to be blessed before departing on a state-sponsored pilgrimage to Mount Wutai. You watch as rows of scribes present their fragrant creations on lacquered trays, each scroll tied with crimson silk and topped with a lotus petal seal. Monks dip their brushes into vermilion ink, stamping the imperial chrysanthemum alongside temple emblems, a ritual that turns each humble paper strip into a tiny scroll of state and spirit. Historians still debate whether the emperor's patronage spurred the true rise of incense scroll popularity or merely formalized an already widespread practice. But either way, you feel swept up in that first wave of divine imprimatur. The abbots lead the ceremony beneath a carved wooden canopy, its rafters dusted with pine pollen and sandalwood ash from countless offerings. Each monk lifts a scroll in both hands, reciting a mantra that sends shimmering ripples through the heavy air. As they chant, assistants sprinkle droplets of consecrated water onto the margins, causing delicate plumes of steam to rise and mingle with the lingering incense clouds. You lean forward, tasting the sweet mist on your tongue, and quip silently. It's like getting a baptism from the fragrance gods. Meanwhile, Taoist priests circle the assembly carrying censers shaped like turtles, symbols of longevity, wafting smoke over the scrolls in spirals meant to seal the blessings into every fiber. You note the contrast, Buddhist chants invoking compassion, Taoist invocations of protective deities, and the scrolls caught between like diplomatic emissaries of faith. A light joke bubbles up. It's like a UN meeting, but with more smoke and fewer translators. Pilgrims kneel in concentric rings around the raised platform, each clutching their own scroll case, some weathered and mended dozens of times with eager hands. When the final chant subsides, there's a collective intake of breath, an almost audible exhalation of thanks that seems to lift the morning fog. Scrolls are then passed down to waiting pilgrims who press them to their foreheads before tucking them into sashes or pouches, the scented edges brushing their cheeks like a farewell kiss from the temple. You slip your own scroll into a crimson pouch, its silk lining leaving a faint rosy stain on your finger. As the sun peaks over distant peaks, the newly blessed pilgrims rise and form a great moving tapestry of saffron robes and silk sashes, each scroll's fragrance trailing behind them like a living prayer. Even highway bandits give a wide berth to the solemn procession rumor holds that no thief dares snatch a scroll consecrated by both monks and priests. You chuckle at the thought of highwaymen shaking their heads and saying, "Best leave those alone or you'll end up in the spirit world in a hurry." With a gentle hum in your ears and a scented talisman at your side, you step onto the winding path once more, the scroll's incense-laced blessing weaving an unseen thread between earth and heaven. Ahead lies the next revelation, pilgrims arriving at remote desert caves, leaving their fragrant messages on sand-blown walls, and ensuring that centuries later, archaeologists will unroll their secrets in swirling dust. Your journey continues. In the previous part, you climbed aboard lantern-lit caravans with freshly blessed scrolls tucked into your sash. Now you step beneath the towering arches of a mountain temple courtyard where stone lions gape and incense coils smolder in iron censers. You unfurl your incense-laced scroll, its margins still faintly warm, and draw a slender flame from a bronze brazier to the paper's edge, watching it flare and curl like a scented ribbon dancing through the air. You probably won't survive snuffing out every ember in one go. Trust me, your eyebrows will protest, but that won't stop you from leaning in to inhale the sweet smoke as though sipping the very breath of the Buddhas. In 782 CE, during the Grand Scroll Light Ceremony at the White Lotus Temple, thousands of pilgrims gathered under crimson banners to ignite their fragrant talismans in unison, a popular historical event that shook the valley with columns of glowing script and carried prayers skyward on tendrils of sandalwood. Monks led rhythmic recitations of the Heart Sutra, their voices weaving through the smoke as pilgrims repeated each verse, letting fragrant ashes drift onto polished stone altars. Strange fact, some devotees collected fallen scroll ashes in tiny clay jars, believing a handful sprinkled into tea would boost their meditation focus. Imagine sipping spiritual latte at dawn. You join a ring of worshippers around a lotus-shaped brazier, each person raising their scroll high before singing a verse. As the edges smolder, you feel a soft pop and inhale the mingled scents of agarwood and rice paste like the sweetest campfire you've ever attended. Flames lap gently over sacred text, reducing eloquent mantras to glowing ash and offering as tangible as the jingling of prayer bells. It's like mailing a letter by letting the wind carry your words, except here the wind is charged with blessings. Historians still debate whether this practice began at Mount Wutai's main hall or in the caves of Emei. Some chronicles place the first scroll lighting beside ancient bodhisattva statues. Others credit a Taoist hermit who urged pilgrims to burn distractions away. Either way, each flicker of flame binds scripture scent and spirit in a fleeting ceremony that lingers long after the paper turns to dust. As you watch the stale ashes settle in bronze offering bowls, you realize pilgrims aren't just reading their prayers. They're leaving them behind, each ash grain a silent witness to devotion. You dip a fingertip into cool white ash, tasting the slightest grit of rice paper beneath the resin's ghost, and quip to yourself, it's like snacking on a prayer. The bowl fills with powdered scroll fragments, forming a mosaic of faith illuminated by lantern light. When the last scroll stubs sizzle out, the courtyard glows with the afterimage of 1,000 prayers. You step back from the altars, feeling the echo of chanting fade and the hushed hush of incense settle into your bones. Ahead lies the next twist on fragrant protection. how pilgrims believed these aromatic rituals kept spirits and bandits at bay as they pressed deeper into wild passes. Your journey continues. You press onward along a narrow cliffside path, the wind tangling your robes, as incense smoke still clings to your hair like a loyal shadow. Pilgrims ahead of you lift their arms in blessing, waving small braziers of fragrant dust to create a scented barrier that crowds believe keeps lurking demons and less divine threats at bay. You inhale the spicy sweetness of crushed sandalwood and pine resin, each breath feeling like a gentle shield wrapping around your chest. Strange fact, some travelers tuck tiny pouches of powdered incense into the soles of their shoes, believing that every step would release protective smoke. Imagine modern hikers with self-spraying boots turning the Appalachian Trail into a giant foot freshener ad. In 790 CE, a popular historical event cements this fragrant defense when the so-called White Robe Bandits terrorized the Tian Shan Pass. According to chronicles, an entire bandit gang fled at the sight of pilgrims fanning flames of agarwood scrolls, convinced the scent belonged to celestial guardians. Monks at the nearby Lingu temple even consecrated barrels of incense for pilgrims to pour onto coals at dusk, creating walls of perfumed smoke so thick it looked like passing clouds. You can almost hear the bandits tripping over their own swords in panic, though perhaps they were just allergic. Bandits weren't the only ones deterred. Local villagers claimed that malevolent mountain spirits, long blamed for wayward travelers' disappearances, recoiled from scented plumes, fleeing deeper into rocky lairs. You imagine grumpy spirit of the gorge sneezing his way out of a cave, hacking up boulders like overstuffed geese. Historians still debate whether these incense rituals truly repelled supernatural forces and criminals, or simply bolstered pilgrims' confidence. After all, a brave heart can turn the fiercest highwayman into a timid shadow. You trail behind a group that pauses at a narrow gorge where two massive cliffs nearly touch. Here, a lone brazier blazes atop a stone altar smeared with red ochre and calligraphic blessings. Pilgrims circle the altar, unfurling their spicy scrolls like floral fans fanning smoke into every crevice. The ritual feels almost choreographed, every flick of the wrist and whispered mantras syncing with the echo of distant gongs. A light joke flits through your mind. It's like the world's most intricate bug zapper. Only the bugs are robbers and demons. Further along, you reach a clearing where a ramshackle guard post built by weary pilgrims to monitor the pass stands abandoned, except for a scattering of carved wooden talismans and a single, still smoking brazier. You dip your fingers into its embers, tasting the faint grit of ash and the lingering resin sweetness. Embedded in the post is a weathered plaque inscribed with the words, "No evil may pass," where smoke reigns a declaration so bold that bandits reportedly rerouted their raids miles away rather than brave the scented gauntlet. You wink at the empty guard post and think, if only my VPN were this reliable. Even storms seem hesitant to break through these fragrant defenses. Local lore holds that on one monsoon night, torrential rains pounded the mountains, but the pilgrims' braziers remained dry smoke, curling defiantly skyward, an event dubbed the Rainless Ritual. Pilgrims tell it like a campfire tale, marveling at how scented scrolls can bend nature's temper. Though skeptics scoff at such miracles, you can't deny the hush that falls when smoke plumes still the thunder's roar. As the sun dips below jagged peaks, you pause at a summit shrine draped in prayer flags. Pilgrims press their scrolls against carved dragon heads, letting fragrant ashes smudge into the stone as a final vow of safety. You step forward, extending your scroll into the incense-laced breeze, feeling its warmth seep back into your palm. A soft joke tugs at your lips. I'd pay for a scented snow globe that does this, and you smile at the absurdity. With spirit soothed and resolve renewed, you tuck the cooled scroll back into your sash. The path ahead winds through moonlit passes where unseen dangers once lurked. But now, each flicker of fragrant smoke promises that you walk under invisible guardianship. The mingled scent of sandalwood and pine resin trails behind you like a living tether to home and hearth. Your journey continues. You slip through the lacquered gates of the imperial palace just as dawn's pale light tints the rooftops gold, the lingering wisp of incense scrolls smoke still clinging to your sleeves like a loyal herald. In the vast courtyard, marble dragons coil around ceremonial braziers, their copper coils still smoldering with fragrant embers that drift into the crisp morning air. You hold your incense-laced scroll, close feeling its warmth seep through silk-lined folds as though the very breath of the Tang court pulses through its fibers. You probably won't survive trying to slip past palace guards by promising them a whiff of agarwood magic, but that won't stop you from inhaling deeply and imagining you're the only pilgrim the emperor personally summoned. In 742 CE, during the height of Emperor Xuanzong's golden reign, the Grand Imperial Peregrination becomes a popular historical event. Xuanzong commissions legions of scroll makers to supply fragrant talismans for court-sponsored pilgrim expeditions to sacred peaks. You watch courtiers in flowing silks swirl into designated workshops, each scroll stamped with the imperial chrysanthemum and dipped in sandalwood oil so potent that a single unrolled sheet perfumes an entire pavilion. It's like handing out pocket-sized air fresheners to ministers, except these carry prayers instead of pine and promise divine favor at every shrine. As you wander beneath red lacquer pillars, you glimpse a strange fact. Few know the palace scroll makers once tested each batch by releasing tiny live sparrows into a sealed chamber, believing the birds' chirps would only continue if the scent was truly calming, and if they survived the fragrance, they'd sing in triumph. You shudder at the thought of sparrow karaoke in a perfumed death chamber and think those court apothecaries had a flair for dramatic quality control. Walking past rows of mahogany tables, you hear the murmur of scribes blessing each scroll with special prayers, their brushes looping characters like dancers tracing invisible mandalas in scented air. Nearby, lacquered trays hold tiny gilded weights, bits of crushed pearl and mica sprinkled atop the fragrant margins to add shimmer under temple lanterns. You smile at the idea of pilgrims casting glimmering dust on roadside altars and quip to yourself, who knew holy paper needed its own sparkle reel? Historians still debate whether Xuanzong's direct patronage or the grassroots enthusiasm of regional monasteries drove the true boom in incense scroll production. But as you peer at a palace edict etched on gold leaf announcing state funding for scented talismans, you feel the weight of imperial imprimatur anchoring every fiber of your journey. It's as if the emperor himself whispered in your ear, "May your path carry my blessing. Just don't set my palace curtains ablaze with your scrolls." You drift into an ornate gallery where high-ranking officials gather to collect their scrolls, wrapping them in brocaded pouches embroidered with phoenix and flame motifs. One minister offers you a knowing nod as you both inhale the heady swirl of sandalwood and frankincense. You nod back and tease mentally. If only this fragrance came with Wi-Fi password protection, marveling at how even the most powerful rely on scented paper for security. Before you depart, a eunuch scholar presses a final scroll into your hand, its edges kissed with golden lacquer that crackles faintly as you flex it. You raise it to your lips in a silent salute, savoring the layered aroma that promises safe passage, imperial favor, and a whisper of courtly intrigue. With that, you slip back through the palace gates, the emperor's scented legacy tucked against your heart, ready to trace the final twists of this fragrant pilgrimage into desert caves. Song innovations and the modern echoes of incense-laced devotion. Your journey continues. In the previous part, you watched pilgrims weave fragrant smoke barriers through mountain passes. Now you press onward across sun-scorched desert flats, where dunes roll like golden waves under a merciless sun. At the horizon, the rugged silhouette of the Mogao Caves emerges hundreds of sandstone grottos carved into the cliff face, each mouth yawning into twilight-shadowed chambers. You probably won't survive trudging through these sands without water and maybe a portable misting fan. But that won't stop you from leaning against a wind-polished column and letting the faintest whiff of incense-laced scrolls you've carried mingle with the arid breeze. Here, pilgrims once left their scented talismans in niche shrines, trusting that the dry desert air would lock in their prayers for centuries. A popular historical event unfolds in 868 CE when Abbot Huiguan seals Cave 17 to protect a treasure trove of manuscripts, among them hundreds of incense-infused Dharma scrolls, behind a heavy wooden door. The cave remains hidden for over a millennium, its air so perfectly arid that the fragrant paste on those scrolls remains remarkably intact. You inhale the ghost of their sandalwood aroma and think it's like opening a vintage wine cellar, but for paper and prayers. Stepping into the first grotto, you run your palm along walls painted with Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, their colors faded yet still vibrant in the dim light. Sand drifts across mosaic floors in silent ripples, and you bend to scoop a handful warm grainy, carrying a faint tang of aged ink and resin. Strange fact, early explorers found that the sand itself absorbed the scroll's fragrance so that pockets of dune downwind smelled faintly of agarwood. Even today, you could sniff out prayer spots like truffle hogs hunting pigs. You grin at the thought of modern perfumers camping out here for natural desert oud samples. You follow a narrow passage into the sealed chamber, where piles of scroll bundles rest undisturbed. Each fragile roll still bears the imprint of aromatic paste on its margins, the resinous paste having bonded with paper fibers like a scented seal. You lift one carefully, its edges crumbling under your fingertips, and press it to your nose. Smoky cedar notes melt into soft, floral whispers. It's like lounging in a spa built by medieval monks. You quip silently, "If only my apartment smelled this timeless." Historians still debate whether pilgrims left these scrolls as devotional offerings, hoping to accumulate merit by gifting their prayers to cave deities, or as clandestine message boards, tiny scented billboards sharing sutras, poetry, and rumors across the Silk Road. Either way, you can't deny the hush that follows when you crack open the wooden door to air so still and fragrant It feels like the desert itself has paused to listen. As your eyes adjust, you spot a crate of silk-bound cases once used to protect scrolls in transit. The silk is tattered, but the chrysanthemum seals remain bright, the residual scent of frankincense and camphor clinging stubbornly. You imagine a weary pilgrim kneeling before these niches, unsnapping the clasp to draw out a scroll like a secret love letter, then releasing fragrant tendrils in a silent homage to the Buddha. A light joke crosses your mind. Who needs Netflix when you have dessert binge reading with aromatherapy? Beyond the sealed cache, you stumble into a vestibule where wind-blown sand has sculpted arabesque patterns over discarded manuscripts. You kneel and blow gently, watching particles swirl like incense smoke settling on ancient wood. Nearby, a handful of scrolls still bear handwritten doodles, little lotus buds, and Taoist talismans, reminders that these pilgrims were as human as you, sketching comfort into their prayers. You trace a faint lotus petal and murmur, "It's like finding a note in an old library book that still smells like roses." Outside, the locked cave shafts of sunlight carve golden beams through dust-choked air. You follow the light to a small recess, where a single brazier stands its iron once used to revive scrolls before stacking them in the niche. Charred fragments of wood sit in its bowl, and you scoop a pinch to your palm, letting the warm ash run through your fingers. Its scent is muted, but you catch a whisper of sandalwood heat, like embers of devotion kept alive through time. You think, this is the world's oldest air freshener. On the sunlit plateau above, you find a weathered pavilion where pilgrims pause to relight their incense scrolls embers before returning home. You drop to your knees, untuck your scroll from its sash, and strike a flint against the brazier stones. Sparks ignite the paste-laced margins, and a plume of fragrant smoke rises, cutting through the dry wind. Around you, the desert seems to inhale in unison, carrying that fleeting aroma eastward toward far-off bazaars and caravanserais. A strange fact surfaces. Some monks believed that the desert's unique dryness prevented the scrolls from decaying, turning the sand itself into a natural preservative. They even advised pilgrims to bury a scroll in the dunes as a time capsule, a practice that left hidden caches of scented prayers like buried treasure troves. You smile, imagining future explorers unearthing fragrant bundles and thinking ancient perfumery meets Indiana Jones. As the sun dips low, you gather your scroll and step back into the desert twilight. The wind stirs, sending a final curl of smoke past your face, an aromatic farewell from pilgrims long gone. You look toward the fading cliffs where fresco guardians stand sentinel and feel a deep connection. These caves aren't just vaults of art and scripture, but living memory etched in sand and scented in smoke. With heart full of echoing chants and lungs filled with ancient incense, you prepare to leave the Mogao caves behind. Ahead lies the saga of these scrolls' later evolution, how Tang Dynasty travelers added silk cases, colored inks, and new ritual uses, ensuring that the fragrance-laced tradition endures beyond desert winds. Your journey continues. You slip into a quiet archive chamber where rows of bamboo scrolls rest on lacquered shelves, their scented margins faintly glowing in the lantern light like ghostly bookmarks. A hush falls as you unroll an incense-laced talisman, the paste-crusted edges exhaling a delicate plume of agarwood and sandalwood that curls around your forearms. You feel the dusty hush of history settle in your lungs as though you've inhaled the breath of 1,000 pilgrims debating the very purpose of these aromatic artifacts. Strange fact, some Tang-era scrolls bear tiny notations in invisible ink directions to hidden spring wells and roadside inns, suggesting they doubled as early pilgrim guidebooks rather than mere prayer aids. In 824 CE, during the Imperial Council on Sacred Journeys, held at Luoyang, senior monks, Taoist masters, and court scholars convened to deliberate the function of these fragrant scrolls in state-sponsored expeditions. Lanterns gleamed on polished jade tables as commentators rose to speak. One argued that scrolls offered essential cartographic details, waypoints to ford rivers, signposts to safe mountain passes, and reminders of monastic way stations. Another insisted they existed solely as ephemeral conduits for divine intercession, their incense tears meant to appease wandering spirits. A popular historical event etched in monastic annals, the Luoyang scroll debate echoed across provinces as pilgrims split into factions, mapmen versus mantra men. Each convinced their view carried the weight of both heaven and earth. You lean forward, tracing a faded map dot on a scroll, and think, it's like arguing whether your smartphone is a GPS or a prayer hotline. You step back, letting the scroll's scent drift past your nose, and note how artisans once embossed margin symbols, tiny arrows, and lotus stamps hinting at practical navigation cues. Yet above those symbols, delicately painted mantra characters loom promising karmic merit with each recited line. Historians still debate whether incense scrolls served more as practical guides or purely prayer aids. Records from the debate survive in both glamorous court chronicles and humble monks' diaries, fueling centuries of scholarly quarrel as frenzied as a tea-house gossip session. You can almost hear learned scholars in powdered wigs quibbling over footnotes like rival noodle chefs fighting over secret broth recipes. Behind you, a silent attendant lifts a glass case containing a rare scroll fragment excavated from a collapsed shrine near Taishan. Its margins bear not only aromatic paste, but also tiny footprints stamped in cinnabar, allegedly marking the pilgrim's progress 1 league at a time. You press a fingertip to the case, tasting a faint tang of mercury hardly recommended for modern tea. A light joke surfaces. I wouldn't mind if my fitness tracker left a fragrant footprint, and you stifle a chuckle, mindful of the grave hush surrounding you. Across the chamber, a scholar in flowing silks pours over a plate of ash residue collected from ritual burnings ash. He claims reveals whether pilgrims consulted their scrolls for direction or devotion. He flicks a powdered sample under his nostrils and declares, these grains bear no soot from braziers lit along known way stations, only the pure residue of incense burned in sacred halls. His voice echoes like a gong at dawn, punctuating the debate with forensic flourish. You roll your eyes and think, if only CSI had incense labs, they'd solve every crime by smell. A low table holds replicas of 3 distinct scroll types. The Pathfinder scroll spotted with map markers and water-stained margins. The Prayerful scroll, its margins thick with paste and calligraphic embellishments. And the Hybrid Path of Prayer scroll, bearing both features in equal measure. You lean in, inhaling each one. The Pathfinder smells sharply of pine resin and earth. The Prayerful exhales sweetness and soot-free sandalwood. The Hybrid is a mellifluous dance of both. You muse, it's like choosing between a compass and a candle, and imagine modern pilgrims debating which app to download, Google Maps or a meditation timer. Outside, A breeze rattles lattice windows, setting scroll bundles to stir like autumn leaves. You slip a Pathfinder scroll into your sash and imagine using it to find hidden waterfalls high on Wutai's peaks. Each lounge where you unroll a map marker, releasing a puff of incense, then you tuck a prayerful scroll into your sleeve and picture reciting sutras beside roadside shrines, ashes blanketing the earth in a fragrant poem, the hybrid you treat like a wild card, half map, half mantra, ready for either crisis or contemplation. In dust-choked diaries, pilgrims recorded the efficacy of each scroll. One traveler credited a Pathfinder scroll with saving her from a rock slide by guiding her to an alternate pass, while another swore only a prayerful scroll's divine aura soothed bandits into merciful slumber. Such anecdotes pepper monks' annals as spice dusts, a soup too flavorful perhaps to be wholly factual, yet impossible to ignore. You imagine bandits sniffing the air and thinking, "Not today, ghost scrolls on patrol." As dusk settles, you follow a flickering lantern out of the archive, the lingering aroma of debate and incense clinging to your hair like a stubborn memory. Ahead lies the era of song innovations, where colored inks and silk cases join the fray, transforming scrolls into jeweled talismans that light the path for future generations. You feel the scroll tucked against your heart, its scent whispering both directions and devotions in one fragile artifact. Your journey continues. You slip into a lantern-lit pavilion draped in embroidered silks, the soft glow revealing rows of delicate silk-lined cases cradling fragrant scrolls like jeweled reliquaries. In the Tang Dynasty, pilgrims no longer jostle ink-stained pouches against rough sashes. Instead, each incense-laced scroll nestles in its own brocaded case, embroidered with lotus petals and phoenix feathers that shimmer under candlelight. You lift a case and feel the smooth heft of damask silk beneath your fingertips, the scent of sandalwood enriched by touch, as though the scroll itself has donned ceremonial robes. You probably won't survive stuffing a dozen of these into your backpack. Your shoulders will stage a revolt, but the luxury of it all feels like carrying a miniature palace chapel in your palm. In 987 CE, a popular historical event unfolds when Emperor Taizong of Song hosts the Court of Pilgrim Splendor at his southern capital. Lanterns blaze along the Grand Canal, and artisans from Kaifeng and Hangzhou converge to showcase their latest innovation scrolls, inked in crimson cinnabar for life protection strokes of indigo lapis, to calm wandering spirits, and even metallic gold highlights that catch incense smoke like drifting embers. You join a ring of courtiers marveling at a scroll painted in 7 hues, each color corresponding to a Taoist element, its margins perfumed with a richer paste of agarwood, sandalwood, and a whisper of musk. As you lean in to inhale, the layered aroma unfolds like a symphony, deep, resonant bass notes of floral mid-range and a bright, spicy finish that tingles your nostrils. It's like discovering your old incense sticks have been upgraded to a 5-star fragrance diffuser. Artisans demonstrate new techniques at lacquered tables. Silk screens press geometric patterns into margins, creating textures that trap fragrance longer, while others apply paper-making innovations. Plant fibers blended with mica dust for shimmer, or embedded with tiny lotus seeds that release gentle blooms of scent as paper flexes. A strange fact surfaces when a visiting monk whispers that some scrolls include powdered dragon's blood resin, an expensive import once reserved for imperial altars, infusing each lined character with a mythic breath. You imagine a pilgrim pausing mid-recitation, noticing a resinous crimson gleam, and thinking, I'm basically reading a dragon's diary here. Between demonstrations, you hear heated debate. Historians still debate whether these colored inks and ornate cases served more as practical guides, using color to mark safe waypoints and water sources, or as purely decorative expressions of piety, intended to dazzle deities and dignitaries alike. Either way, the spectacle cements the Song era as a golden age of sensory scripture where form and function blur into artistic ritual. You wander down a side corridor where apprentices practice embroidering scroll cases with silk threads dyed in shades of peony pine and plum blossom. Each stitch secures more than thread, it seals the scroll's blessings in a tapestry of symbolism. A toddler apprentice accidentally pricks his finger on a silver needle, and you offer a sympathetic wince, picturing medieval first aid kits of vinegar and tea leaves. A light joke floats through your mind. If only modern unboxings came with free Band-Aids, and you smile at the anachronism. Beyond the embroidery alcove, you discover a scriptorium filled with translucent papers, tinted pale green or rose each hue, said to harmonize with different sutras. Monks guide scribes in painting sutra passages using brushes dipped in colored inks, each stroke releasing flecks of aromatic paste as the brush caresses paper. You watch an artisan trace the characters of the Amitabha Sutra in sapphire ink, and the margins exhale violet notes that drift like ghostly wings. It feels like reading a sacred comic book, every panel scented and chromatic. On a long lacquered table, a line of lanterns illuminates polished copper containers where fragrant pastes cure overnight. Apprentices rotate scrolls on racks above small charcoal braziers to age them, coaxing fragrance into fibers until each scroll carries a signature aroma unique to its maker. Strange fact, some scroll makers age their scrolls in caves for weeks, believing the echoing acoustics enrich the scroll's spiritual resonance as well as its scent. You imagine a pilgrim emerging from a cave clutching a scroll proclaiming, "It smells like enlightenment." Just outside the pavilion, a group of Song-era pilgrims gathers beneath blossoming plum trees, each swapping colored scrolls like prized gems. You trade your crimson-inked talisman for one painted in emerald, its margins redolent of pine resin rather than sandalwood, and marvel at how the simple act of exchange feels like a ritual of brotherhood. A merchant nearby shakes his head at the spectacle, muttering that only commoners fuss over colored inks. True spirit lies in the purity of the unadorned scroll. You chuckle inwardly at this echo of the earlier map versus prayer debate, realizing that every era reinvents its own rituals. As dusk falls, you join a circle of pilgrims lighting their colored scrolls' margins in unison. Each flare sends a plume of multi-hued smoke swirling into the air, painting the courtyard in pastel clouds that catch lantern light. You breathe deeply, letting the fragrant tendrils wrap around your heart, feeling that this sensory renaissance in Song China has elevated incense scrolls from humble talismans to living works of art, pulled between the demands of devotion, navigation, and aesthetic wonder. With your emerald-inked scroll tucked safely into its silk case, you step back onto the glowing cobblestones of the capital's waterways, the mingled scents of plum blossom resin and metallic ink, swirling like a living tapestry around you. Ahead lies the next chapter, archaeological rediscoveries of these innovations, where modern digs unearth fragments still shimmering with mica, and scented with aged paste, reminding you that even buried relics can exhale stories in fragrant echoes. Your journey continues. You crouch in a shaded trench where beams of sunlight cut through the dust-laden air, illuminating fragments of rice paper peeking from the sandy soil. Around you, teams of archaeologists brush away centuries of sediment to reveal the mottled edges of incense-laced scrolls once thought lost to time. Each gentle sweep sends a faint cloud of ancient ash into the air, and you inhale deeply, earthy resinous and impossibly evocative, like sipping a fine vintage brewed by monks. Strange fact, during the 1907 Dunhuang expedition, Sir R.L. Stein's assistants used cigarette lighters to test scroll fragments, accidentally incinerating dozens of priceless manuscripts until they learned to sniff for fragility instead of flame. You wink at the thought of modern conservationists cringing at those early burn tests. In one vaulted cave near Yulin, you uncover a scroll still tucked inside its silk case, the embroidered lotus petals shimmering with mica dust that catches the lantern's glow. You tiptoe closer and lift the fragile bundle, feeling its weight in your palms, a featherlight relic of devotion. It exhales a whisper of sandalwood that drifted into that niche over a millennium ago, preserved by the arid desert and the cave's cool embrace. A popular historical event surges to mind the 1900 sealing of Cave 17 at Mogao, which inadvertently created a time capsule of manuscripts, many scented with fading incense paste. You smile, thinking it's like stumbling on history's best-kept fragrance vault. As you trace your fingertip along cracked ink strokes, you recall the first news reports of these rediscoveries, headlines proclaiming Buddhist scrolls, breathe again, and desert shelters, ancient prayers. Historians still debate whether the preserved scents you now sniff are original to the Tang artisans or later additions from song renovations. Some argue that repeated temple refurbishments layered new fragrant pastes over old, creating a multi-century olfactory palimpsest. You close your eyes and let the swirl of resin camphor and faint floral top notes wash over you, feeling time ripple in scented waves. Nearby, a conservator gently applies a humidifier bathed in distilled agarwood essence to rehydrate brittle fibers, the mist curling around you like a gentle fog in a sacred forest. You shiver with delight as each drop teases out hidden aroma, compounds the paper, sighing with relief. A light joke flits through your mind. Who knew scroll restoration could double as spa therapy for ancient manuscripts? You suppress a giggle, mindful that even delicate humor can soothe tension in the hushed dig. Beyond the cave, ox carts trundle away with crates of scroll fragments destined for museum labs, each sealed in climate-controlled cases that promise to cradle fragrance for future millennia. You watch the crates roll past, their wooden sides stamped with lotus emblems, a modern echo of the crimson seals pilgrims once pressed before departure. Strange fact, a few fragments still bear the faint imprint of a pilgrim's thumbprint, forever embalmed in scented paste, as though the traveler left behind a fragrant signature. You press your own finger to a replica case and imagine leaving invisible notes for some curious descendant to discover. As the dig winds down and lanterns flicker low, you tuck a microfilm copy of a scroll map into your pack, a modern stand-in for the fragile originals, and breathe in the cool night air scented faintly of resin and dust. The site's silence hums with the echo of centuries' incense rituals, pilgrim footsteps, and the hush of devout reading. You stand brushing sand from your robes, knowing that each rediscovered fragment rewrites the story of incense-laced devotion and lights the path to sensory memory and tradition for generations to come. Your journey continues. You find yourself in a dimly lit ancestral hall, the walls lined with lacquered cabinets containing scroll cases passed down through generations, each one still whispering faint echoes of fragrance like a half-remembered dream. The air here feels hushed, as though every carved beam and polished floorboard carries a trace of incense-laced prayers from ages past. You lift a weathered case stamped with a family-crested silk, fraying at the edges, and pry it open, releasing a soft plume of sandalwood and agarwood that drifts upward in slow, languid curls. It's as if the scroll inside were breathing, exhaling centuries of devotion in a single scented sigh. Strange fact, some families kept a single heirloom scroll that they never burned, believing its layered fragrances bound the living to their ancestors' merit, so that opening it once a year at the winter solstice was like pressing refresh on the spirit world. The scent draws you toward an alcove where embroidered banners depict scenes of pilgrims exchanging scrolls and ashes at mountain shrines. You reach out and touch the embroidered thread, soft, almost imperceptible under your fingertips, and catch a faint residue of resin from hands long vanished. A light joke surfaces. It's like fossilized perfume on a fabric fossil. But you couldn't call that tacky here. Rather, it feels reverent, a tactile time capsule. Each banner, each scroll case, each cracked fragment of paper becomes a repository of collective memory binding individual stories into a tapestry woven of scent and scripture. Pilgrims still speak of the fragrant bridge on Mount Emi, where incoming travelers place their incense-laced scrolls on a stone balustrade, allowing the wind to carry prayers to unseen realms. Even today, visitors pause there to leave modern replicas, some printed by laser, but still dusted with artisanal paste, so that the ritual endures as a sensory monument to tradition. You stand on that bridge in your mind, feeling the breeze tangle your hair and lighten your lungs, carrying a whisper of smoky sugar that reminds you of every chapter you've witnessed, the Maya-inspired journeys of the soul, the Tang Court's golden patronage, and the desert cave's time capsule devotion. Historians still debate whether sensory memory, this fusion of smell and story, serves as the truest form of preservation. After all, ashes fade and ink flakes, but fragrance, when carefully bound to paper fibers, can endure in subtle resonance. You recall the archaeologist exhuming aged scrolls, marveling not just at the characters, but at the undimmed aroma that rose when they cracked open brittle cases. That haunting scent became a key to unlocking the scroll's context, the season they were made, the woods imported, the prayers uttered. It's as if the scrolls carried their own metadata encoded in volatile compounds that spoke of harvest times and trade routes. Leaning against a carved pedestal, you inhale deeply and let the sensory memory bloom in your mind's eye, lantern-lit workshops, echoing grottos, silk-lined court pavilions, and desert sands that swallowed prayer and oil alike. Each waft reminds you that devotion isn't just written or spoken, it's lived through the body's most ancient sense. You quip silently, if only every history book came with scratch and sniff pages, even as you acknowledge that some things like the hush of a scriptorium or the hush of a shrine can only be known by presence, by inhalation, by the quiet communion of breath and smoke. And so, With the ancestral scrolls fragrant settling like dew on your spirit, you prepare to step beyond the archive's threshold into a world where incense-laced traditions find new life, where modern seekers, mindful of sensory connection, reimagine these ancient talismans for a digital age hungry for tangible ritual. Your journey continues. You stand on the crest of a gently rolling hill at dawn, the horizon bathed in lavender light as the aroma of incense scrolls you've carried mingles with fresh dew and distant temple bells. In the chapters above, you traced the first scratched characters of talismanic sutras, inhaled the smoky swirl of palace-sponsored scroll lightings, and watched fragrant manuscripts lie undisturbed in desert grottos. Now you find yourself back at the beginning of all journeys within your own breath, feeling how each inhalation binds past and present into a single living moment. You probably won't survive trying to catalog every scent memory you've gathered. Your mind might short-circuit like an overloaded incense furnace, but you won't stop from letting that fragrant archive settle into your bones. Across the centuries, the practice of carrying incense-laced scrolls evolved from a niche hermit's experiment into a boundless tapestry of belief and artistry. Today, you enter a modern pilgrimage center where seekers don smart sashes equipped with microcapsules of agarwood, extract-releasing calibrated scent pulses. As they traverse labyrinthine meditation halls, you step inside and inhale a curated blend of frankincense and cedarwood that wafts from overhead vents, each gust timed to your steps by hidden sensors, an echo of Tang Dynasty scroll cases that popped open in rhythmic sequence around court promenades. Strange fact, some contemporary mindfulness coaches pair QR-coded digital guides with scented patches to augment presence, effectively marrying ancient aromatic devotion with pixelated meditation apps. In 2025, a popular spiritual trend finds pilgrims retracing the old Tang roots, armed not with paper scrolls, but with biodegradable scent strips printed with QR-linked mantras. At designated waypoints, each marked by carved stone monoliths, you peel and inhale a strip infused with locally sourced sandalwood, instantly streaming a guided chant through your earbuds. The journey becomes multi-sensory. Your feet press ancient cobbles, your ears hear real-time chant tracks, and your nose navigates fragrant cues mapped to historic shrines. Historians still debate whether these high-tech talismans honor the scroll's original spirit or transform sacred devotion into a gamified tourism app. But you can't deny the beauty of pilgrims pausing mid-stride to breathe in blessings stored on a tiny strip of paper. Outside, community potlucks unfold under tinted canopies, where tables groan with scroll-making kits, bamboo brushes, rice paper sheets, and fragrant pastes, blending agarwood, lavender, and rare musk from goats raised by artisanal herders. You join a circle of volunteers at a scroll revival workshop, dipping brushes into scented glue and writing single-character prayers in crisp black ink. As your neighbors seal their scrolls into hand-stitched pouches, an instructor explains that each scent combination is guided by the principles of feng shui, aiming to harmonize the 5 elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, within each traveler's oral, tactile, and olfactory field. You dip your brush tasting a whisper of cedar dust on your tongue and chuckle. If only my yoga mat came scented with feng shui. In university, labs chemists analyze ancient scroll residues using gas chromatography mass spectrometry to reconstruct the exact aromatic profiles of Tang artisans. Their published papers ignite debates in academic journals. One side argues that modern syntheses can never fully replicate the terpenoid complexity of Tang-era agarwood, while another group contends that microencapsulation techniques have unlocked an eternal fragrance resistant to oxidation. You scroll through these articles on your tablet, marveling at molecular diagrams of incense smoke, and think it's like reading a perfume's DNA. Pilgrims these days travel in eco-friendly caravans powered by solar lanterns and charcoal briquette stoves, pausing at interpretive signposts where QR-linked videos explain how to burn and release scroll ashes responsibly, so no desert or mountain landscapes suffer buildups of historic residue. You stop at one such sign, lift your modern scroll, and ignite its scented margin with a solar-powered lighter. The smoke rises in gentle lavender spirals, echoing the ash-patterned prayers you first ignited in Tang halls. A light joke crosses your mind. Who knew solar incense would outshine moonlit braziers? Yet you feel a deep respect for how this tradition both honors the past and protects the planet. Community shrines along converted pilgrim routes now host seasonal scroll and scent festivals, where artists create live installations, walls of rice paper embroidered with pollen and resin, interactive scent domes, where visitors hover beneath hanging scroll chimes that release fragrance when touched. You step into a dome and run your fingers across the scroll chime, inhaling a mist of coriander seed and sandalwood that feels both ancient and avant-garde. It's a reminder that the human impulse to bind scent with scripture transcends technology and time. As dusk falls, you join a circle of mindful walkers beneath a canopy of string lights at a modern meditation retreat on the very slopes once trod by Tang pilgrims. Each walker releases pocket scroll ash into communal bowls, a gesture echoing the scroll lighting ceremonies of old, while a guided voice narrates ancient proverbs. Let each breath carry both remembrance and release. You lean into the chant, breathing in that final plume of history, feeling your heart tethered to generations who turned paper and paste into living prayers. With the last echo of incense smoke dissolving into night, you recognize how the legacy of incense-laced scrolls persists, not as dusty relics in caves, but as vibrant invitations to pause, breathe, and connect. Modern pilgrims may swap braziers for diffusers, scrolls for smartphone overlays, but the core alchemy remains unchanged, transforming simple materials into portals for devotion guidance and communal memory. You lower your gaze to the final glow on your scented strip, grateful that this fragrant lineage endures in every inhalation, every whispered mantra, and every step on the path ahead. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let these scents and stories cradle your mind. Now, as the world around you grows quiet and the soft rustle of paper scrolls fades into memory, let your thoughts float on the scented breeze of sandalwood and agarwood. Imagine yourself lying beneath a star-swept sky on a hilltop traveled by countless pilgrims. Each breath you draw a gentle echo of incense-laced prayers, weaving you into a tapestry of devotion that stretches across time and space. Feel the warmth of twilight's hush wrap around your shoulders like a soft shawl, and know that every fragrance you've carried is now a lullaby, cradling your spirit. With each slow, deliberate exhale, release the day's cares into the night air, watching them drift away on plumes of smoke. Let the residue of ancient chants settle in your mind, becoming a soft cushion upon which dreams may alight. Picture The delicate scrolls you've held rice paper stained with paste and promise gently resting against your heart, their residual scent singing you toward serenity. Allow their aroma to ebb and flow with your breathing, each inhale a tender affirmation, each exhale a whisper of release. As your eyelids grow heavy, imagine a single lantern-lit pavilion perched on a quiet temple hillside where incense coils spin like suspended petals and nightingales sing you softly into dream. In that space between wakefulness and sleep, let the boundary between past and present dissolve and feel the continuity of countless pilgrims guiding you into restful depth. Every story shared, every prayer burned, every scented scroll ignited becomes a star. In your personal night sky, bright points of comfort and connection. Drift now on that perfume of memory and hope carried by the gentle zephyrs of devotion. May your dreams be fragrant with peace, illuminated by candlelight, and bound by the timeless promise of incense scripture and the endless journey of the soul. End of script. Sweet dreams.